Hello and welcome to the United Devil with me, JB. I hope we're all doing really well today on this Friday. Thank God it's Friday, the 7th of July. This week has gone far too fast in terms of a week and in terms of a football transfer week for Manchester United. Also means for me, it's an extra week to the summer half term, which is 6 weeks of interestingness. Combine that with holidays, combine that with the transfer window, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. So I hope we're all doing really well today in whatever we are doing. I'd love to know what you're up to for the weekend and what you've done in the week. And of course, importantly, the transfer window. Now, obviously, again, yesterday, what happened yesterday, and the reports come out for Jota yesterday and Andre Silva. You know, it does pale into comparison. You know, I don't want to make every show about that, but I think it's really important that we still recognise what happened yesterday, you know, and it is absolutely horrific. You know, it still plays on my mind, you know, whenever I kind of talk about this stuff in the back of my mind already. You know, I'm still, you know, thinking about, is this really important in the grand scheme of things? But we have to carry on. No, as sad as it is, you know, for people who are not impacted, like his wife and his kids, his family members or their family members. You know, it's I think it's really important that we continue this football-wise. So it is with a heavy heart today that I think we need to continue and question our own club. So the thumbnail basically indicates, and I would love to know your opinions on this from both sides. I think it's really important that we get a balanced opinion on this, even if you kind of fall somewhere between the cracks. In my opinion, you know, you've got left and right, but you've also got that bit in the grey as well. And as I say here, everyone's entitled to their opinions. I think as long as we keep it friendly and we respect each other, I think here there is no blockers on opinions whereby you might be out there. You may have an opinion which you think is maybe out there from the mainstream. This is a place to come to basically give that opinion. Let me know, put some stuff in the chat, and I will, as long as it is clean and respectful, I'll happily read that out, and we can have that debate and that chat. We may not always agree, but I think it's valid that you have your opinion, and I have my opinion, especially around this time of year. So the thumbnail, in my opinion, today, and it's a Friday show, there's not really a lot to talk about in terms of the transfers. I think I've said all I've needed to say this week. We can maybe do a touch point and we can discuss your opinions on how you think we will proceed. So I think the topic really for me today is Amorim. Now, how people feel. Now, there was a lot of chats yesterday from Mark, who is already a legend of the chat. Is that a lot of people now are already on the bandwagon of Amorim out, and I will let you know where I stand on that. I think first and foremost, you know, I think it's right to acknowledge that all of the Glazer supporters, again, if that's your opinion and what you want to do, then that's fine. I'd love to know why you support them, and maybe if you can kind of put some arguments and points in there across. I think that would be a interesting debate to have. So Glazers and INEOS together. Already, I think that they are setting Amorim up to fail. Now, whether you think that's right or wrong, and we can discuss the Amorim probably hasn't helped himself in regards to what it is he's done. Some of, for me, the red flags already, but I think it's an existential question. I think there's a bigger question here is that INEOS think are supposedly to be this new dawn for the club, and supposedly, they've taken over the football side. However, it still feels like a Glazer summer. In fact, I think it feels slightly worse. Sir Jim and the board were of the opinion that they need to walk to a decision that is right, as opposed to run into the wrong one. Now, on the merit of that, I don't disagree that we need to be able to not be taken now for a ride, and I think that's correct. We also can't now just spend money at the end of the window, so we're not ending up overpaying for players. Of all those combined from sort of outset and as an overview, I don't disagree with that. We've spent over £1 billion of our own cash. Now, what other clubs don't seem to get, and they'll complain and moan at us for this, that we've spent £1 billion probably over that. But at the end of the day, that is our money. That is the cash that we've made, and the Glazers haven't put a penny of their own cash into the club. Let's fast forward to the transfer window now. Lots of people before this window and wanted INEOS into the club, were saying that they were going to make all the changes behind the scenes. I've seen a lot of people talking about this, how INEOS have made changes to the football side already, and things that like they're doing. They're trying to do these deals and whatever else that they're trying to do. Quite simply, my counter argument already to that is what's happening. Like, I have not seen personally, I have heard a lot of noise. I have seen people already been sacked. They've sacked half of the workforce in order to apparently streamline the business, even though Man City, Liverpool still have double the workforce that we have. Maybe we did need to streamline him, but I think that's a little bit of an excuse. Excuse me. And we got offered 100 million for Fernandez, and we turned that down. I understand. I don't understand, because I'm staunchly, and my viewpoint on this is that I'm staunchly against, and I always have been against, somebody who can facilitate the Glazers, which INEOS have done. If INEOS came into the club and decided to buy the whole club and decided to do things in their own way, there may be leeway. For me, I would have given them that. But I'm always going to be on the back, as they have propped up the enemies of this club. Now, what was really important for them to do this summer was to hit the ground. Cunha signing, potentially, I thought was maybe a start, but it's gone quiet since then. And we have essentially taken 5 to 6 weeks. After this week, we will be approaching 6 weeks for the Mbermo deal. And what that indicates to me straight away is that this club primarily, number one, has no idea what to do. The negotiations on the transfers over the last 12 years, and this is exactly the same. Now, not walking to a decision that's wrong, but I really believe that they do not understand football. There is a market that is in place, and this year for number 10s, the market has been set not by this club. United have been accused of setting the price, which is absolutely ridiculous. The Cunha deal for a Premier League proven, number 10, I think is there or thereabouts, as it's been transposed now into the market. Whereas like an Alanga will go for 55 million. The market has been set there. And what is fundamentally clear to me is INEOS and the Glazers do not understand, even after all this time with the Glazers, they do not understand how this market works and what you need to do. So the rivals, and I say this now because what's really sad for me to admit, and I'm wearing this 99 top. This is my original original top from when I was 16 years old. Now, I wanted to wear this top today because I'm trying to channel the spirit of that era. This top to me represents more than the treble. Represents a time where we were massive. Represents the time when we were successful. Now, all clubs, they go through a period of transition, as we did, and this top obviously for me as well represents a time before the Glazers. Our rivals used to be Liverpool, Arsenal, City to a certain extent, since they got bought by the oil money. I think I was thinking about this morning, and I'm programmed, or I was, for our the rivals to be Cities and the Arsenals and the Liverpool. And the sad thing for me when I put on this top this morning is to realise that they're not rivals anymore. We're not in their conversation. We're not in the conversation. They are not. They're not scared of us. Nobody's scared of us. And we are, whether we like it or not. And we can buy 2-3 players. Liverpool and City are already so far ahead of us. They've strengthened, and for us to catch up, we would literally need to buy a whole team, which will not happen. So the rivals that we have, and this is no disrespect to the teams around the 15th. And if you didn't know already, that is where we finished last season, was 15th. The only reason why we went down last season was because of Fernandes. As much as he's not been great, I think that his goals and his stats, I think just the fact that he pads out them stats and he actually does something on the pitch, he got us a ton of points. And because the bottom three that came up were awful in a different year, in different eras, where the bottom three had a chance, I don't think we would have been so fortunate. So all those things combined, and let's take out for a second the results on a pitch, which again, when we're looking at a combination of the team full of low IQ players, and I do believe that this team is full of low IQ players. Again, I'd love to know your opinions on players, whether you think I'm being unfair to them. We buy mercenary players. We buy players who are not up to the standard, and all this is our fault. We not as fans, but the people that are custodians who own this club supposedly have this ownership of the club, and they are custodians. They believe that they are owners of this club. They believe that this club is theirs. It's not theirs. This club is ours, and it will always be ours. Whether their ownership on paper they believe is theirs, in fact, it's not theirs, and that's what they need to understand. So, with all that in mind, and that said, Amorim had a really terrible season. Now, I don't believe that all of it is down to him. There are a couple of red flags, which I can forgive until this year. And I'll explain kind of why just after I'll explain the thumbnail. So he's come into a team of players that are not his. He's been asked to come in to a club that don't play his style. We're not set up. We were never set up to play that style. Amorim, to me, is a manager that you bring in when you already have a team. Now, I know in terms of Porto, he got those players and he brought the players in, and they hadn't won the league for a little while, and he got them playing in the Champions League. But however, he was able to do that because of the way that Porto are. The way that Sporting Lisbon are. And Sporting are one of the biggest clubs there. So, of course, he's going to be able to bring in players in that league and probably have some of the better players. Sporting, their players that they bring through are fantastic. Sporting are a fantastic club. So they've got all that there. So the right guy at the right time, though. So Amorim Fast forward to me is a manager that you bring into a club that you know he's got his players, or he plays in a similar style, maybe not the same, but you have players that can play that style, like a City. I'm convinced that City were planning to bring them in. So INEOS, for all their strategy, which was never done. That was never done on the team. That was done on the business aspect of it. And was it a viable something to own effectively? So nothing was done on the football side, which is quite clear. So they decided, even though we didn't play that style, we didn't have players to play that style, and any competent club, any competent person who came in to look at the club and look at the assets and look at how we play would never have come to a decision to pick that manager, and he did. Now, Amorim, from his perspective, I admire the drive of him to think that he can come into the team and train the team. I think he was sold a lie. I think he was sold this dream. I don't think he knew really what he was walking into, because the club gag and bound managers and people from speaking to tell the truth, and they spin people around so much. So they brought in a guy who doesn't play the system and just said to him, continue, and you basically need to make this team play. And again, the big indication to me of Sir Jim is apparently a lifelong fan, even though he tried to buy every other club completely and a season ticket for the Blues. So he's a Chelsea fan, and even then, I don't think he understands football at all. So a manager that comes into the club already set up to fail, in my opinion, knowing that there are a bunch of players that they cannot shift, they cannot move, and effectively tying his hands behind his back before he's even begun the job. Now, Amorim, it was his choice to take the job. Obviously, what people will need to get is that this club is massive. Whether or not we're doing bad on the pitch, this club is a huge draw still. So from that perspective, he's already set up to fail, where he doesn't have the support, he doesn't have the players, and fundamentally the players are the ones who do the stuff on the pitch. Fast forward, we had the worst season that we've ever had, potentially going to go down. There was one stage I was convinced we couldn't buy a win, we could barely buy a win, and it looked like we were about to go down. But I think there was a chance, but the other three teams were so bad that saved us. Fast forward to now. Now we have a load of deals to do. So my question really now is that given how long it's taken to do deals, are we just so bad at doing deals that it takes 6 weeks to basically posture and to basically spin us around to try to get a single deal done? Are they that incompetent? Or alternatively, are they doing this on purpose? So they know they can't do as many deals as we would like. So, for example, we know we need at least 4 to 5 players in this team. Are INEOS and the Glazers stalling this out so they can just say, oh, we've had to take our time on these deals because, they're really hard to get done, blah, 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 blah. So then if every deal takes 6 weeks, by the end of the window, we could only sign 3 players, and they already have an excuse. And part of me will not put anything beyond these. I'm going to call them snakes. Beyond these snakes, beyond this incompetence. Now, again, it'd be really interesting to find out what you guys think about that. Do you think that there is a conspiracy here potentially? Do you think they're just so awful? Even if you're bad at your job and you've had 12 years experience, something eventually is going to drop. Okay, something eventually. If you do the same job, doing the same thing for 12 years. So, for example, if you are on the transfer side, and I'm sure there are some of the same people there, even for 4, 5, 6 years. If you're doing the same job, even if you're bad at that job for 6 years, you should get better over time. Considering there are 2 windows in a year, you should pretty much get good at your job or have some idea. But yet we still have no idea and we still take 5 or 6 weeks. But is this a tactic? Is this a ploy for the Glazers not to buy players? There's a factor as well to consider, and I'm on the fence on this one. But this is behaving like a business, is that we don't want to pay 2 sets of players. So you're going to have an overlapping of new players and old players. And until we sell these older players or the players that we don't want, we're going to be paying out a wage. And the Glazers and INEOS don't seem to want to pay out this wage. Now, because of how we pay our players and the salary of these players, we are kind of we put ourselves in a position, again, not as fans, the club put us in a situation whereby it is pretty much impossible to be paying 3 or 4 players 300k a week and then bringing in another players and 200k a week, and you're paying both sets of players and the possibility that these 3 players may not leave. And how ludicrous is that, on the basis that big clubs have the confidence and know that they will shift these players, but because we're so incompetent, we don't have faith in ourselves to transfer these players out. So we're not going to be bringing these players in for fear that we're going to have to be paying 2 sets of wages for new and old players, and we can't shift the old players. And this is and Amorim, for all his red flags, and we can talk about that as well, is how is he supposed to manage? How is he supposed to get the best out of this team? How is he supposed to have a fair chance to do what he's supposed to do for this club? So if, for example, they do bad on the pitch, I don't want to sack a manager. I don't want to sack another manager, but I want to be able to look at myself and look at the manager and say, when you get sacked, I know that it's you. I know that you've been given every opportunity to succeed. And the reason why you're getting sacked is because of your incompetence, because of the players that you've had your players, you've said you're happy, and there is nothing that can be accused at the club or nothing that can stop a manager from being sacked. And Amorim is already falling into that gap, that cycle that we have. And the worst part about it for me is, unless he gets the players in the quantity that he actually needs and the quality that he needs, if he can get 4 quality players in the positions that he needs, I think he'll be okay. And then he can, but at least then that's 5 players is pretty much like half a team. And as long as they're not injured, then that's something for him to work with. Caveat to that, and I'll talk about the red flags that I have with the manager. So I can put that aside and say, there is for me, 85% is not his fault. And I think the knives are out. And if you have that opinion already because you don't like how he plays, you can't see any improvement with the players, then I can't say anything about that, because that opinion is a valid opinion to have. I'd love to know in the chat if that's what your opinion is, and let me know for you why you would like him to be sacked. And obviously there's another side to that, is if we were to sack him, I can't believe we're already having this chat, but in light of nothing happening, I think this is a really important chat to have. Who would we replace him with? Now, The red flags for me, and this has been it's Mark Harris, legend of the chat. Good morning, sir. I hope no, good afternoon, sir. I hope you are doing well today. Amber needs hope and Bob Hope, but to begin, he has no experience or qualities for the job. INEOS. We're desperate. Groundhog Day vibes, and I think that's an interesting um, nighttime. Oh, okay. So, Mark, where are you, mate? I'd love to know what part of the world you're at. Thank you. And what's the time there? Um, Australia. Wow. Thank you. I mean, that's pretty cool. Um, thank you for the chat, mate. As always. I think I think Mark used to live in Hackney. Wow, that is a good career move. A long move. Okay. Yeah, 9:11 p.m. there. Um, Hackney. God, I used to live in East Ham, which is not too far away, really. Um, I had to marry an Aussie woman. How's that working out for you? Obviously, you didn't have to marry her. That was your choice. I hope you're still together. Um, um, but yeah, I mean that is a long way to go for love. And obviously work. Islington divorced in 2007. I mean, okay, 19, 18 years ago. But you got to stay now. So there's always upsides, isn't there? So interesting. So thank you for watching all the way from us. Now, Mark's comment. I do think, Mark. I think that we do share some opinions. I also what I like is that you do offer a kind of different opinion on it as well to mine. But I think we're kind of quite close. I think Amorim. I think that in terms of experience, I do think he's got experience in terms of the Champions League, but does that really translate into the Premier League? So the Premier League is I'm going to say one of the best leagues in the world. Obviously, it doesn't. I think if you're going to look on par and if you're going to average it out, I do think we do have the best teams. I think the league is very, very fast, very physical. And Amrin, I think you're right, Mark. He doesn't have that experience. And I think potentially because he beat City in the Champions League, which is a different ball game completely. I think maybe he thought that this league, he'd be able to sort of manage that league. Now, when you come into a league from the Portuguese league, and you've got the likes of an Aston Villa, you've got the likes of any team pretty much already here now will give anybody a game, and I don't think he has that experience to cope with that because you have to play week in, week out. You have no easy games now. Well, unless you're another team playing us. You have no easy games. And I don't think he was prepared for that. He definitely didn't necessarily have the squad. Ultimately, it was his choice, right? So he didn't have to take the job. And as I sort of said, I do admire that ambition to think that there's something that you can do. But I think it's really difficult. I think because he doesn't have his own players, and I think that's one of the red flags for me that I think we've spoken about, is that it's not really fair because he doesn't have his players. But after X amount of weeks, and I know time on the training pitch is really important between games. Obviously, we had a lot of games last year, so being able to get the tactics into these players, I still would have thought they would have trained. One of the flags for me is, despite these players, in my humble opinion, not being good enough, But you could argue that the caveat is that we say these players are not good enough. How many of these players have left this club and gone on to do well? Not loads, but the players that have left, they have gone on to do really well. So I will admit that there's a counter to that. One of my red flags, which cannot be aimed at the Glazers or the club as much as I want to aim everything at them, is why Amorim couldn't get some sort of response from these players. Are these players so in love with themselves? Are these players so up their own arse that you can't get a tune out of them because they literally don't care? I don't understand why this manager couldn't just improve these players by 2-3%. We seem to have gotten worse under the coach. So that's one of my red flags. Is I'm not saying that he's got to get everything out of these players, but you look at the players that we had, and there were a couple of players that kind of did improve, like an Ahmad, but how much was that down to the player and how much was that down to the manager? So I didn't see any advancement of any of the players. Now, second one for me, and this is quite a big one, is that according to reports in February time, I think it was, that Amorim was prepared to leave and he was talked out of that. Now, if there's any truth to that, now I don't understand why that would come out about the manager and how true that is. And if that is true, that for me is I understand the process, but that's almost a admission already that he can't do this job. So what changed to the degree that Amorim decided to stay? I'd love to know what made him stay. Um, and why he now thinks that he can do this job. And the final flag for me, and I've mentioned this numerous times, and I do need to get over this completely, is the final. We can say what you want about Spurs. At the end of the day, Spurs still won the cup, and the bit for me was playing Mount. You know, you had players that played all through the rounds, and he decided to play Mason Mount. Amorim has a team of 5 or 6. Why no improvement? Do they work with the youth or just professional secret service at Old Trafford? Oh, Mark, you crack me up. So again, that was a red flag, and I will come back to that as well, Mark. Is that a red flag when you've got a Spurs team that played that was the worst final I've ever seen in any football capacity, and I've played in some games myself, and that was Sunday League. Absolute crap. But do you know what? This was a professional footballing final. It was the worst final that I've ever seen. Spurs must have been counting their lucky stars. They were dreadful, but we were even worse. So all those combined to me going into this year, this summer, it's a really big one. I agree with you. I think that Amorim has the Dallows of this world. Oh, not again. So the Dallows of this world, the Fernandez, and that Fernandez is a massive red flag. Now he's his guy. Clearly is his guy. So why couldn't he get a tune out of him? Okay, he scored goals and he still did, but he disappeared in those massive games. Agree with that as well. So he has these 5 or 6 players, like maybe Ahmad, obviously Mason Mount, who is just unbelievable. So the Dallows, the Fernandezes, the Mason Mounts, Ahmad, Hoyland, that's 5 there. And I know we don't have a striker, but why would you persevere with a player who couldn't score? Why would you not take him out of that team. And OB, I don't understand why you would give him a little bit of a shot, even if it's just half a game. Rasmus Højlund just did not work, and you could see that, but he persisted, which shows stubbornness. Reminds me of Eric Ten Hag, and obviously you've got the Portuguese connection there as well. So again, that's probably another red flag as well. Is that we're supposed so Amorim is supposedly kicking these players out who are not good enough, who don't play, who are not prepared to play for the team, who have not played. The form has been not the best. He's kicking these players out. He's devaluing these players. That's another red flag for me. Is that he's devaluing these players. He's devalued two players, two of our biggest assets are players. He has devalued those players to the point where nobody wants them. Sancho doesn't count because I just can't wait for him to go. But yet, the Portuguese players, he seems to favourite the players the same as Mount. So, as much as a manager needs players that will fight for him and will play games, when these players don't perform, like Fernandez went hiding, I know he can play every week. And the sad thing is, the reason why he played every week is because nobody else puts in a shift. So we put in a player, whether he disappears or whether his form is bad or not, Amorim is forced into playing this player. He's also playing him even when his form is bad and not giving a chance to other players. So, as Mark says, it seems that Amorim doesn't like players with egos similar to Arteta, and that he's going to have an interesting time with Cunha then. So, I just really sort of right now there are two factors at play, and I can see it a mile off, and if I can see it, I know you guys can see it as well. Is that we are walking into a disaster. You can quote me on that in August. If we sign 5 or 6 players, we get rid of Anana, we get rid of Sancho, Rashford, Anthony. We get rid of all those players and we bring in 5 or 6 players, irrespective of whether they're here on the tour, but we bring them in, then potentially there is something there. But right now, I believe that we are walking into another terrible, terrible season. 2 players are not going to shift the mindset of this team. And Amorim, if Amorim says that he's okay with this team and he's happy with the players that he's got, if he wants to be a mouthpiece for the Glazers, for INEOS, then that is on him. After the 4-1 thumping against the Arsenal press conference, I need time with my new players. Again, I've had the exact same thoughts on that as well. Now, negativity from me, I really wish. I don't want to come on here and be just like, oh, the world is bad. And I really want positive things to say about this club, but I'm not going to create content for clicks. I believe in saying it how it is. If INEOS do a good job, I will say they've done a good job. I still don't support them. I still want them out. I want them gone. But if people do a good job, then I will say that they've done a good job. And it gives me something positive to talk about. I want to be positive. I might be a man of a particular age, but I'm not a pessimist. All I want to see this club rise again. And if INEOS and the Glazers clear the debt, they turn this club around. At that point, I would say maybe I was wrong and they've changed their ways, and I'll be happy, and we can all hold hands and be friends. But this is not going to happen. So thank you, Mark. That's probably one of the nicest things that anyone has ever said. I do try to keep it real. I don't want to. I want to keep on beating this drum about this club. We need to keep on their backs because it will put the pressure on them to do something. Whether they will, I might need to like hardwire it in. So I bought a router. Um, I work in IT, so I know how to set these things up, which is quite poor actually. But it doesn't want to work, and it's absolutely shockingly bad. And the other half is at home today. So whenever she's on her work, the bandwidth just seems to get destroyed, even though it's like 150 meg. I could always tell whenever she's working or she's doing something in there because the signal drops. So God knows what's happening in there. So again, it feels like another show whereby not a lot has happened. We can kind of touch upon the status of the transfer. Hello, Danny B. I hope you're doing well, my friend. All the hearts and that, mate. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh, I just don't want to be negative. I really want to be positive about things. And when we are and the season kicks off, and we lose 4-1 to Arsenal, I really hope not. Hopefully, then it'll give us something to focus on and something else to talk about. So, in terms of the transfers today, I've seen a load more spin. I walk away from in Burma deal worse than Mills and Boone. Jesus, that's an old one. That's really, really, really old one. Can you imagine if the Mbermo deal went to the deadline day? Imagine taking a whole summer to do the transfer. Then I would definitely agree with Mark Harris and say that the board don't back him, which is really, really scary. Transfer wise, in Burmo deal, those accounts who were basically trying to get a leap on people to basically see that the Burmo deal was done. It's not done. Crypto 2021, we finished fifth, and with Amorim, fans have been negative. You know what? Again, that I think that's a valid opinion on that, and I try to fall somewhere in between, not because I'm trying to have a balanced viewpoint on it, but I think that's important, and I think the comment there is right. I think fans are getting on his back when a lot of this is not necessarily his fault, but there are red flags. I think that whether you acknowledge these red flags or not, whether you agree with me or not, for me there are red flags there. Now I would love to finish fifth and come back on here and you can say you're wrong, we finished fifth. You know, you're a miserable old git, and I'd love that because it basically means that I'm wrong and we've done well. So I can only base my opinions based on what I've seen in the past and what I see now. We can predict or try to predict what will happen. I can only go by the plays that we still have here. Pre-season has started or is about to start, and I can only go by what I see, the length of time it takes us to do deals. I don't see any positive change from the club. Now, as I said in the thumbnail, I think I want to support him, and I do think to a certain point they are basically trying to sabotage him. Maybe not on purpose, but unless they do what he wants, and he deserves his shot. So I think what I want. But again, though, I think you've made a good point. I think he only needs 3 signings to get us back competing. Do you want to let me know what signings they are? I'd love to know the 3 signings that you think. And so Cunha's here. Are we including him in that as well? A goalkeeper, 100%, 100%, 100%. Who would you go for? If you could pick a gettable keeper now, who would you go for? So the keeper, I think, is 100% absolutely nailed on. I think we need that. Do we need another Pele, George Best, Cruyffy looming Real Madrid? That's an interesting Hackney at Borough. Yeah, yeah. But again, these are signings that, again, you people with the brain, who know football. These are deals that, or players that you guys know, you see, you watch, and but as a club, we're not intelligent enough, and this is why us fans and you guys know this game, and you're smarter than the people at the club, because these are players. These are players that I think would, even if people don't necessarily know who they are, would transform this club. We need these sorts of deals, but we're not clever enough. Not us, of course. The club is not clever enough to do these deals. Even if they not costing a lot of money. Seriously, I Mark Harris, I agree with that. So Kone, I think I might be wrong on this, but I don't see why we don't try him. I really hope pre-season he's given a chance. I don't want to send him out on loan. I know that we are stacked in the midfield, but I do think we need a young player like that, who's not going to be infected by the dressing room just yet, who is obviously going to have that drive. Imagine you're 18, 17, and you get called up. You're going to learn, and what they want them to do is they want them to learn from the new players, and they want them to fight for the badge. And this is what we missed. I'd much rather have these younger or hungrier players who want to play for this badge. I do mind, but I don't mind if I don't want to lose games, but I'd rather lose a final, for example, by a lucky goal where we've peppered working. There were games under, um, when we whereby we lost because of the odd goal here and there. That happens. But the one thing that they would never do is not try. It just you used to take a look from the manager, and no matter what they did, they would try. And this is what we need to get back to: is we need fundamentally players with drive who want to play for this club, who want to play for the fans. I couldn't give a monkey's ass if they don't want to play for the Glazers, if they don't want to play even for the coach. If fundamentally what they want to do is play for us fans, which is what they need to be doing, and we actually try, then as far as I'm concerned, no, you're a player. And then when we then improve, then we can then maybe try to integrate these big stars. And the problem why we can't integrate these big stars now is because we don't have the personalities in there, like a Keane or Giggs or Scholesy, that will give them a little bit of a kick if they get above the station, and they need to be humble. And this is why we fell. So I do believe that Amorim is so difficult for me to judge the manager right now. As I say, there are flags, but how can I be true to myself? I don't want him out just yet. I don't want him out at all yet. I need the manager to be backed. I want him to be backed. I want him to have no excuses. I want a manager to be sacked because his tactics weren't right, because he sacked himself. That is what I want. I don't want these players to down tools again and sack another manager. I want the manager, if he's going to be sacked, I don't want him sacked at all. But if he is going to be sacked, I want him to sack himself, because the tactics that he used and the players that he chose were not right. And that's where I'm at. But right now, I think he's been set up to fail. I do understand the calls already, or maybe the criticisms of him, because there are quite a lot of red flags. But I think what I'd like to see, or what I'd like to do, is give him the benefit of the doubt until a couple of games into the season, and then at that point, no, even I think we probably have to give him longer than 5 games, unless he loses every one of those 5 games. I think we have to give him a shout. Danny B says they haven't picked up their tools since. I agree with you on that. So as well, I think these players have down tools. I think there are certain players whereby I would keep. So I asked that question: what players would you keep? I think Mazurari, I think I'd keep him. I think he does try, but again, he did peter off towards the end of the season. A Delit, I like him. I think he divides opinion a bit, but I like him as a player. So Yoro, I like him as well. Maguire, as much as he wouldn't go to West Ham, I would keep him, only because, again, what's pretty sad about the statement I'm about to make is that this is how low that we've dropped, is I would keep him on the basis that he tries. And if we could get a replacement, then he's gone. But I would keep him because he tries, which is quite pathetic of me to say. But that's the state that we're in. Heaven, I think he's class. Heaven, I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think he's just an absolute steal. And whoever picked him up obviously had a lucky day. Now, midfield wise, Ugarte, if there was an opportunity to shift him out for the same amount of money that we paid for him, I would do that now. I don't necessarily think it was his fault. I think it was not the worst buy. I think he needs time, but I don't think we can afford that time. Mainu, I don't ever like to see youth players sold. But if there was an opportunity to take a chunk of money for him, and I mean like an offer like 100 million, I might be tempted to take that, only on the basis that Amorim doesn't seem to fancy the player, not because of the ability of that player. If he's not going